Good morning, and you have reached Gloria with Farmstead Talk, and I am here with Christie Goss of Gray, Tennessee, and you can find her at her blog at asemifarmedkindoflife.com, as well as on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. Welcome, Christie, and thank you for joining me this morning.
Good morning, Gloria. Thanks for having me today.
No problem. So, Christie, if you can tell me a little bit about your history, where you were born and where you are now today.
Okay. I was born in Southwest Pennsylvania, below Pittsburgh. My grandparents had a farm, and I spent a lot of weekends and summertime there. I grew up in a suburban area. I had a hobby farm for about 5 years after my daughter Bailey, who's 16, was born. And then when she was 5, life changed a little bit, and we moved to North Carolina, neighborhooding. And now we're transitioning back to the farm. We're there part-time now. We share our time between the house in Hickory and the farm in Gray, and our house is on the market. So we're working our way towards full-time farming. My dad mans the farm when we're not there.
And about your dad, you had mentioned to me before about your dad's feelings about farming. Can you just go ahead and share that with us?
Oh, sure. My dad grew up on a farm, and they grew vegetables and raised animals. And I think it wasn't a lot of excitement for an only child to be on the farm. And he saw how much work was involved. And for my grandparents, it was a survival necessity. Farming wasn't financially lucrative, but they loved that life. And they were some of the most content, happy people I know who truly loved what they were doing.
That's really nice. I love to hear the story about grandparents and being influenced by your grandparents. So that was one of my questions, is who was your biggest influencer regarding gardening and homesteading? So I would imagine that would probably be your grandparents. Yeah.
Definitely. We all had a garden at home. My dad grew a garden. We canned a little, but almost everybody gardens in Pennsylvania because it's so easy to grow things on a large or small scale. But my grandparents were my biggest influence. My dad always said that farming skipped a generation because he didn't love it like they did, and I do. And he said he worked his whole life so he didn't have to rely on the farm and kill himself to survive. But
Understood. Real quick, share with me about, you said that you had a hobby farm, if you will, in the past. So what did that look like?
It was a total of 25 acres. We had 5 acres with the house and another 20 acres about 5 miles down the road. And we raised goats and chickens. And it was one of the best things to watch Bailey when she was 2 to gather the eggs in the morning. That was such a joy for me. We raised rabbits and bred beagles and I think goats, chickens, beagles, rabbits. That's it.
And you had mentioned before that farm, that period of your life when it was time to cull, if you will, you weren't real crazy about that. You said to me that it was you felt like it was more of a petting zoo.
Right. Right. I would feed things forever, and anything that, there's no telling what I would have on the farm if I was left unattended. But Bailey seems to be more of a practical farmer. Even when she was tiny, we had rescued a rooster from my friend Connie's farm. She raised limousine cattle, and she had this one rooster he was a tiny little man, but he was so awful and ill-tempered. So of course my dad says, I love anything that's a pain in the neck. So I said, we'll take him to our place and see if he does any better there. We already had a large rooster, and they were both leghorns. So we brought this little guy there, and we tried everything. He was just awful. He was mean to the girls. He was mean to Bailey. He was mean to the roosters. So he had to be culled, and I cooked him, but I couldn't eat him. And it wasn't a big moral stand for me. I just couldn't do it. And you know what Bailey said during dinner? She said, he's so delicious, and he was such a pain in the neck.
That's funny.
So I'm maybe going to learn from her a little bit.
Yep. Learn from our kids. It's funny. So take me to the place and time where you were in Tennessee looking for properties, and where in your dad's life was he that he became a part of this whole search?
Well, we had initially, my husband and I had started looking for a vacation home, probably a year ago at this time. Um, and we weren't sure if we wanted the beach or the mountains, and we were just looking for a second place to weekend. And then last summer, our family went through some changes in the makeup, and my dad found himself single. So he retired in May, and I was very surprised to learn that he was interested in moving south. He's a cold weather guy. My sister's kids are almost all grown, and I still have little kids at home. So he said that he wanted to move to be closer to help me raise them, like he helped her raise hers. And I was just thrilled with my husband travels some for work, and just to have that extra grandparent presence was delightful for me. So we initially started looking at multi-generational properties, and just were working out or just fitting what we needed just exactly. So we ended up in Tennessee, and we looked at a lot of 2-bedroom, quarter-acre lot, just properties for someone that didn't want a lot of maintenance for him. He had decided that he didn't want to wait till we found this magical multi-generational property, and he was going to just get something that was going to work immediately. And we probably had 10 on the schedule that day. We looked at a couple, and then we pull into this farm, and I really hadn't checked the itinerary super close. I was a little surprised, and it was a farm indeed. So we got out, and the owner was there, and Norma had lived there since the 50s. As soon as she got married, the house was built in 1924. Her husband had raised Arabian horses on this property, and I think she said they had up to 30 at one time. And Miss Norma had just decided the farm was too much for her to manage, and her children and grandchildren were raising their own families, and they just couldn't maintain the farm. So thankfully for us, it was available, and I fell in love immediately, but I just really couldn't figure out why we were there. I just couldn't imagine that he would want to buy a farm. So we left, looked at one more house, and he said, call Colby, our realtor, cancel the rest of the day, and tell him to turn around and go back to Miss Norma's, because we're going to buy that farm.
That's exciting. It just makes me feel like it was almost meant to be, you know?
Yes.
Very interesting how that worked out for you. And I'm glad it did, from a man that came from a long time feeling of not wanting to participate in that lifestyle anymore. So I'm glad it worked out that way for you. And just a little bit, if you would describe the farm for me, and what is the feel of it, and what does that look like? And I know you sent me some pictures, and we'll go ahead and attach those to the,
Okay.
at the end of the video. But just explain just a little bit about the feel of and the vibe of the farm.
Well, I think you said romance. Like the whole thing is very romantic. My dad said the farming skipped a generation, and I think he gets quite the same feeling, but he does love this property. The first thing you see when you pull up is a big red barn, and you had me at big red barn. Like I was from there. The barn has 6 horse stalls, and it's in great shape. We have a second barn that's a little bit older. It's also a large barn. It's open inside with kind of a loading chute built in to load cattle. From the back of that, it opens into a round pen. There are 2 creeks on the farm. It's 25 acres, which is plenty for what we can manage right now, but not too much to manage. And the pastures are all fenced and separated by small sections of woods. There's otters in the creek. We have a giant tortoise that we see from time to time. After he's seen us, he's gotten a little better at hiding. But
I love that you have the creek running through the property.
Yes.
mean, that's going to be a great benefit in the future too.
There's access to water for the animals and to water the fruit trees. And even in August, when we haven't had rain for 6 weeks, there's still spots that are almost 5 feet deep. we'd like to have some fish there, but the otters make that.
Kind of impossible.
Yeah.
But how nice to look at them. I mean, it's
Oh,
full of nature.
yes.
Full of nature. So regards to the benefits of living in Tennessee.
Oh, right. So I think I started to talk a little bit about the mountains that surround you like you're in a mountain bowl, which is just, I love that, to be downtown and to see the mountains all around. But when we started looking at properties at Tennessee, we started to investigate the local culture and, the perks to living in Tennessee. And we learned that there's no state income tax, which is a
Nice.
huge deal. The sales tax is a little bit higher. I think it's close to 10%, but that's a consumption tax. So we're not big stuff people. So that's not such a big deal. And also their education system is incredible. Or whoever's managing the lottery funds is doing a great job. They provide each resident with 2 years of either community college or state school at no charge. And the public schools there are incredible. They even do their best to encourage the kids to start their senior year to take classes that ETSU is close to us. So
That is so fabulous. I think that is such a wonderful benefit for people wanting to start, a new life and not knowing where to go and just exploring different states. I think that's some really good information to have. What are your hopes for your children in this transition?
I would really love the kids to be feral. I want them to run in the fields and play in the creek, and I want them to learn how to take care of the animals and grow vegetables and just have that sustainable lifestyle.
That's an interesting way of you putting it, for the kids to be feral. And I try to
Unplugged.
feel that and absorb it, and it's really nice. It's a great picture for me to see in my head, that these children are just not limited. They could run around and play, and I don't know, it's all very romantic to me, but that's great. Let's go back to the land real quick. And I think land management and land stewardship is very important. And I know you had mentioned before, when we had chatted before, that you had picked up and relocated some of your trees from where you were living to the farm. And tell me about the kind of trees that you have moved, and what are your plans for the actual land?
So these trees, they're fruit trees that were fairly young. They're about one season away from bearing fruit that I had planted at my house in town because that was all I could manage. We're not allowed to have livestock. So right. I planted some fruit trees. So I moved some blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and figs. And my dad transplanted those on the farm. And, I think there's a little transplant shock going on, which isn't unexpected. So I think by next spring, it'll be warm in Tennessee until the end of November. And you can actually plant fruit trees until the end of November there. So I think they'll have time to get acclimated, and then by next spring they'll be in good shape. And I just ordered, I missed the boat on the peaches for this year, but we just ordered apple trees, grapevines, some more blueberries, and some more figs to put back. We have one of our pastures has pear trees already growing, and a little pawpaw grove.
And I seen a picture that you posted about the pawpaws with your daughter, and it's very lovely. I'm glad that they're producing. So, come next year or in the forthcoming years, you're going to have some beautiful harvests to look forward to. And with that, you also had shared to me that with this land and with the toll transition, that you have a dream of doing something. And what is that?
We do. So this farm, we'll start out. We have some cattle now that are living with us, and the girls want horses. So that's my dad's plan, is to help the girls take care of these horses and to I don't know what discipline they'll choose. I think Sailor wants to be a jumper. So we may end up hauling horses all over the place to show. But my husband and I, we're both cooks. We're both food people. I'm more of a country ethnic kind of, I can make a meal out of whatever's in the pantry kind of girl. And my husband is a gourmet cook, and his cooking is incredible for having no formal training. So we don't like to cook together, but we like to parallel play in the kitchen. So Johnson City's going through an incredible revitalization right now. There's a lot of new restaurants and shops coming in downtown. In a perfect world, we would acquire a little additional land, hopefully nearby the original site in Gray. I'd like to raise some heritage pork. My dad's actually building me a smokehouse this winter
Nice.
on the farm. And I wish I had the book here. It's at the farm. But I bought a charcuterie manual, encyclopedia guide cookbook, and I want to smoke my own meat and make bacon and sausage. And so the end game would be to buy a building in downtown Johnson City and hire a chef and a manager and have the farm that we could have true farm to table and raise everything from protein to vegetables, eggs, the whole bit, to supply the restaurant. And what we weren't raising ourselves, we would want to get from local vendors.
It sounds absolutely lovely. And when your dream comes to pass someday, will you invite me to come to your new restaurant?
We will bring you to the restaurant. Absolutely.
I'm so excited to keep continuing following your story. So we're just about at a close now, and I just wanted to ask one more thing. And if you can sum up with one word your feelings about gardening and homesteading, what would that be?
Personally, my word would be bliss, but I think a word that covers the whole family would be provision. God's provision of the land and the animals, and just of the blessing of everything coming back in abundance that seemed to be lost years ago. My grandparents' farm and then our hobby farm, life changed, and we had some big life changes in our family in the last year, but that's what enabled my dad to retire and move to be near the kids. And I planted this fruit in this house, and I thought, oh, I just planted this, and now we're going to move, and now it's all together at the farm. We're together. So I just think it's just provision.
That's lovely. Christie, you inspire me, and I know you're going to inspire other people. And I thank you so much for joining me and partaking in this interview. So thank you again, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.